Hello, I'm Rav Sha'ul, and today I'll be teaching from the Sabbath Covenant YouTube channel. And before I do, let me use my spiritual weapon and blow a hole in this present darkness that surrounds us and bind the prince of the power of the airwaves so that my message may be heard. Hallelujah. Let the teaching begin. Hello, I'm Rav Sha'ul, and today I'm going to be teaching on Ezekiel's 4 wheels within a wheel, and I'm going to demonstrate clearly that what Ezekiel saw and wrote down in letter word form and described is the exact same thing that Enoch saw and illustrated into what we have here on the right, over here, the Enoch Zodiac, or the Mazzaroth. I get asked a lot, Sha'ul, where did you get this ridiculous-looking zodiac? Well, it isn't really that ridiculous. If you notice here, there's no mythical creatures, half man, half beast, and naked women and all that kind of stuff on the true plan of salvation, the heavenly scroll given to us by Enoch. You just have normal animals and people, and they all are pictographs. They mean something. Yahuwah had illustrated with these pictographs meaning behind them, and we're going to figure all that out. I do that in my book, Creation Cries Out, the second edition, the Mazzaroth. So where did I get this particular one? Well, I tell you what. When you go back into history, what you find is the first few centuries, going back around when Yahushua walked the earth, you find that Mazzaroth, the Enoch Zodiac, if you will, was literally the centerpiece of their faith. Here is the ceiling of one of the worship centers dating back to that time period, and wouldn't you know it, there it is. It was literally the centerpiece of their faith. Everything they understood about the earthly scroll, the Torah and the prophets, they understood in context of the heavenly scroll, the original revelation from Yahuwah to mankind. Here's another example. We go back to the early first couple of centuries. This is the ruins of a synagogue there in Israel, and you can see, again, you have the Ark of the Covenant up here, up the top, and some menorahs and some articles of worship, and some stories down here, but right there in the middle, the literal centerpiece of their faith is the heavenly scroll. Again, here's another ruins of a synagogue going back to, the first few centuries, and again, you see the very centerpiece of their faith was the heavenly scroll. Here's another example. This is another synagogue that was discovered, and again, you have the Ark of the Covenant, some menorahs, and some stories around it, but right there in the middle, the literal centerpiece of their faith is the heavenly scroll. Now this one, if you see right here, this is where I actually got the one that I use. This one. I took this one here, and it had been damaged. If you see right here, and over here, and there's some places, a lot of damage to it because, it's, pretty old, a couple thousand years old, not probably about 1,500 years old. Anyway, I had to take it into Photoshop and repair it, which is what I did. So I took it into Photoshop and restored the heavenly scroll, and that's what I use as the foundation of my teaching in my book, Creation Cries Out. So today, that's what we're going to do. We're going to take this heavenly scroll, the same one that they knew about going back thousands of years, all the way up until the Pope literally abolished it by papal edict. He told us not to look at it anymore because it was a threat. This revelation is a threat to Christianity. That's why they don't want you to see it. But we're going to look at it today. Hallelujah. So let's just get started here. I'm about to break down what Ezekiel wrote and described and show that he was literally looking at whatever it was that Enoch looked at and that he drew as a diagram. So let's begin over here with Ezekiel chapter 2. And what I want to demonstrate here is that what Ezekiel was looking at was the heavenly scroll. Ezekiel chapter 2, verse 8, But you, son of man, notice that Yahushua wasn't the only one called the son of man. But you, son of man, hear what I say to you. Be not rebellious like the rebellious house. Open your mouth and eat what I give you. Now, that's a metaphor for mentally digest the heavenly scroll. It's the foundation of the plan of salvation written in the stars that must take place on earth. It was the foundation of Ezekiel's prophecies, as I'm going to show. It was the foundation of all the prophets. So Ezekiel says, and when I looked, and he's looked up at the stars, behold, the heavenly scroll. A hand was stretched out to me, and behold, a scroll of a book was in it. Now, I put my comments in blue parentheses to keep all this in context so we know what's going on. Since I'm soundbiting this stuff, I just want to put that in parentheses here so we know what's happening. So anyway, he says, when I looked at the stars, he beheld the heavenly scroll, and in it a hand was stretched out to me, and behold, a scroll of a book was in it. We notice here in the heavenly scroll that Enoch drew, there was an angel here sitting right over the creation of man. Mankind was created at the end of Gemini. There's Adam and Eve. They were created at the end of Gemini, moving into Taurus. But anyway, we see a heavenly scroll in her hand. And you notice that angel is sitting, like I said, right over the creation of man. The next angel is sitting right over the transition to the kingdom age. So we have in there each age is 2,000 years. So we have Adam and Eve created at the end of Gemini. That's why she's sitting there with the scroll, which describes the plan of salvation for mankind. That's where it began. We have 2,000 years, the age of Taurus. That's a bull. That's why they worshipped the bull in Egypt. And while the Israelites created that calf and worshipped it, they were worshiping the signs of the Zodiac, which they weren't supposed to be doing. But anyway, the age of Taurus was symbolized by a bull, and then you move into age of Aries, which is 2,000 years, and that's a lamb or a ram, and that was symbolized by Isaac was saved by a ram, and then the Passover lamb, was symbolic of the age of Aries, and then we move into the age of Pisces. Yahushua was born right here on the cusp, the transition of Aries to Pisces, and the Messianic age was known by the symbol of the fish, Pisces. That's why you saw his secret followers use that as their symbol. And then the next angel here is sitting right over the transition from Pisces to Aquarius. That's when Yahushua returns, and as the water bearer, he mikvahs the earth. The water bearer pours out living water over the earth to mikvah it of sin and uncleanliness, as scriptures declare. Okay, what I wanted to illustrate there is that Ezekiel was looking at the heavenly scroll, and he said that, he saw a scroll in the hand that was stretched out to give to him, and he was to digest it and learn it. But like I was saying, in the heavenly scroll, we have the Sabbath covenant portrayed between the two living creatures, or angels, if you will, that were perched over the creation of man, and then the next one is perched over the transition into the age of Aquarius, which is the kingdom reign. We have 6,000 years, and then the Sabbath rest. So we have a picture of the Sabbath covenant prophesied right there in the heavenly scroll. Now, next thing I want to talk about is let's start looking at Ezekiel. Let's go back to chapter 1. Chapter 2, he said it was a scroll, but chapter 1, he actually talks about it and describes it, and I want to illustrate that what he was looking at is the same exact thing that Enoch drew in his diagram. So Ezekiel chapter 1, let's start with verse 5. It says, and from the midst of it came the likeness of 4 living creatures. He's talking about the 4 living creatures perched over the cardinal points of the zodiac. And this was their appearance. They had a human likeness, but each had 4 faces. Each of them had 4 wings. We'll notice here that they each have 4 wings. They got 2 there and 2 there. So there was 2 sets of wings on each side of them, just like Ezekiel just said. But anyway, he said in verse 10, as for the likeness of their faces, each had a human face. That is right here. The man, Reuben. Each of the 12 tribes of Israel were associated with one of the 12 signs of the Enoch Zodiac. And Reuben was associated with Aquarius, and Ephraim, Taurus, and Leo was associated with Judah, and Dan was the Scorpio or the eagle. So we see Ezekiel here in verse 10, as for the likeness of their faces, each had a human face, and that's this one. The face of a lion, that would be Judah, right there, the lion. The face of an ox, that would be Ephraim and Taurus. And the face of an eagle, that's Dan and Scorpio. And this is the exact layout of the Ark of the Covenant in the tents there in the desert. The main tent would be in the middle, and all the tribes of Israel would be on the four corners, exactly as portrayed in the heavenly scroll. So here we see Ezekiel again describe exactly the four cardinal points of the zodiac in detail. He said one had a human face, that's Reuben, Aquarius again, the man. The face of a lion, that's Leo, the tribe of Judah. The face of an ox, that's the bull, Taurus and Ephraim. And the face of an eagle, that's Dan and Scorpio. Scorpio can be a scorpion or an eagle. So let's move on. So far, what Ezekiel witnessed and described with words is identical to what Enoch witnessed and wrote or drew as a diagram. So let's go on. Let's look at Ezekiel 1, verse 16. We're going to continue to read what Ezekiel wrote about what he saw. In verse 16, he says, "As for the appearance of the wheels and their construction, their appearance was like the gleaming of beryl, and the four had the same likeness, their appearance and construction being, as it were, a wheel within a wheel." We'll get to that in a minute. Verse 17, "When they went in any of their four directions," talking about the cardinal points of the Mazzaroth, the zodiac, "without turning as they went." In other words, they all went in the same direction. Verse 18, "And their rims were tall and awesome, and the rims of all four were full of eyes all around." We'll get to that too. Verse 19, "And when the living creatures went, the wheels went beside them. And when the living creatures rose from the earth, the wheels rose. Wherever the Spirit wanted to go, they went, and the wheels rose along with them." So these four creatures on the outside of the heavenly scroll, whenever they moved around, they took the scroll with them, just like Enoch described in his diagram. Now Ezekiel begins a new thought, describing a second set of four creatures surrounding the throne. Verse 26, "And above the expanse over there," the second set of four creatures' heads, "there was the likeness of a throne. And seated above the likeness of a throne was a likeness with a human appearance." Verse 27, "And from the waist upward," or from upward from his waist, "I saw the appearance of fire enclosed all around." We'll show that too. "And downward from his waist I saw the appearance of fire, and there was brightness around him like the appearance of a rainbow." Now we're going to compare all this description with what Enoch illustrated in his Enoch Zodiac. Here we are back with my main presentation now. On the right-hand side, I have the diagram that Enoch drew after witnessing the heavenly scroll. And on the left, I have the words that Ezekiel used to describe what he was looking at when he looked up and beheld the heavenly scroll. Now, we know that Ezekiel said that the whole thing had the appearance of beryl. So we can see the beryl color all through this thing over here on the right that Enoch drew. And Ezekiel said that all four living creatures on the four cardinal points of the Enoch Zodiac, they had two sets of wings. And we can see over here, there's one set and there's two sets. So each one of these four living creatures has two sets of wings. And Ezekiel said as they moved the whole thing around with them. And that's exactly what you see here. Then Ezekiel went on to describe another set of four creatures surrounding the throne. And Enoch drew that in the middle here. Let's take a little closer look at that. We see here, Ezekiel said that above the four creatures was the appearance of a man. There's the four creatures that John said was singing holy, holy, holy. We'll get to that later too. But here's the man. And then Ezekiel said above his waist was the appearance of fire. And if you look at the crown on this man's head, it's the appearance of fire. And then he said from the waist down, Ezekiel said, was the appearance of a rainbow. And there's the rainbow throne that Enoch saw. So now what I'm going to do is I'm literally going to dissect. I took this image in a Photoshop and I broke it apart into four wheels within a wheel. Okay, now this is my answer to those who would try to teach us or lead us to believe that Yahuwah showed up from a mothership and zoomed down here in some pod that looked like this and spoke to Ezekiel. Somehow proof of aliens and spaceships and all that nonsense. Anyway, I'm going to show you what Ezekiel really saw. I'm going to take this Enoch Zodiac, which is a wheel, and I'm going to break it up into 4 unique wheels, and I'm going to move it over here on the left, and I'm going to show you exactly what Ezekiel saw. So let's start with the first wheel, which I call the outer wheel. It's the rim, and as the 4 living creatures moved about, they moved the whole thing with them. Let's stick it over here in its place, right there. We're going to look at it here in a minute. And then the second wheel I call the frame. This is the frame. It's the frame of the whole thing. It's the second wheel. We're going to move it over here and stick it above wheel number 2, the frame. Then the third wheel that Ezekiel described was full of eyes all around. That's the wheel that has the signs of the zodiac, the pictographs that portray the plan of salvation, and each one of them is an animal or a human being that has 2 eyes. So there's 24 eyes all around, exactly as Ezekiel described. We'll put that over there in wheel number 3. And then finally there's the fourth wheel, which I call the throne room. It's the throne wheel that he described with 4 beasts and singing holy, 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 as John said, and we'll stick that on over there too, and we're going to go look at these in detail. Okay, so here we go. We got the 4 wheels of Ezekiel. Let's zoom in on them so we can kind of see, that they match. First wheel, Ezekiel said, contained 4 living creatures over the 4 cardinal points of the zodiac. As they moved around, the whole thing moved with them. Verse 16, when the 4 living beings moved, the wheels moved, and when they stopped moving, the wheels stopped. When they rose up from the ground, the wheels rose up from the ground, and the wheels rose up beside them. So there you go, outer wheel number 1, the rim, with the 4 living creatures. And again, he said each creature had 2 sets of wings. He said that, there was a heavenly scroll in the hand of one of them, and there that is. And so the second wheel, like I said, is a frame wheel. Ezekiel didn't have a whole lot to say about that wheel, but he did say there were 4 of them, so there's the second one. It's the frame. Okay, over here we have the third wheel, which is the signs or the eyes wheel. Ezekiel said in verse 18, wheels were full of eyes all around. There you go. 24 eyes. There's 12 signs of the zodiac that are pictographs that have meaning. Each one of them have 2 eyes, so there's 24 eyes there all around. All right. Next thing is the wheel number 4 is the throne that Ezekiel said, high above the throne was the appearance of a man. Let me grab my pointer so I can point these things out in case you just can't see them. There he is. There's the man. And of course, Ezekiel said from his waist up, I saw something that looked like fire, and we looked at that already. It's the crown of fire there. And from his waist down, the appearance of a rainbow. There's the rainbow throne that John described in Revelation and Daniel described. They all describe the same thing. Every prophet was given the vision of the heavenly scroll, and I'm going to show that in other videos. So we see that actually Ezekiel wasn't visited by an alien in some alien spaceship and came down here in a pod or nothing like that. Ezekiel was just simply given a vision of the heavenly scroll that he described, the same vision that Enoch saw and drew as a diagram. This has been a presentation of the Sabbath covenant from the viewpoint of a Nazarene. I'm Rav Sha'ul. Blessings. I encourage everyone to rediscover the heavenly scroll, the original revelation from the Creator to all mankind. I restore this vital revelation in my book, Creation Cries Out, 2nd edition, The Mazzaroth, on Amazon Books in print and Kindle, and on the book patch, $10 for the full color PDF.